these guys, they're blaming things external of them because they're in hustle mode and they're making some money, but they're not fulfilled inside. And when you're not fulfilled inside, truly filling your cup up, then you have to start blaming things external of you because you're empty inside. So therefore, the problem has to be external. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Powerful Man Show. I am your host, Doug Holt, with my co-host, Tim, the Powerful Man, Matthews. Tim, how's it going, man?
I'm doing well, brother. How are you?
I'm doing awesome. Having a great morning. Ready and exciting to get this rocking and rolling.
Nice. Me too, man. Me too. I always enjoy our conversations.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Tim, what we're talking about today is location. And what happened is one of our alpha resets, one of the men was complaining about, we've heard this before, but he was saying, you know, where I'm living isn't conducive to support me in my environment. I don't know if you remember that conversation, but it kind of became a joke, and I'll explain why that became a joke. But what I want to talk about today is how our location isn't really the problem here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do remember the conversation completely. And I wasn't there in the evening when the initial conversation was happening, but I remember the guy sharing it with us and the reaction that it got. And, you know, at that moment in time, the gentleman in question, he just couldn't see it, could he? And that's okay. You know, we can't see our own blind spots and we don't know what we don't know. But it was so nice and exciting and amazing to see his response by the end of the alpha reset when it actually landed with him. And you could see, oh, wow, shit. You know, on the end of the second day, you remember, he was stood there going, oh my God, it's not the location. It's not it's none of those things. Shit, it's me. And I can change it. And it was such an amazing and beautiful sight to see him reclaim his power. You know, day 2 is all about release and reclaim. And in that moment for him, he was really able to reclaim it. And yeah, from moving forward into day 3, it was a phenomenal change.
Yeah. And so for our listeners, let me set the scene because I was there. I had the conversation with him initially. So what was happening? We see this a lot. And it may not be your location. And we hear this about people like, hey, in my area, I don't have people around me, or et cetera, that I can have these conversations with. But this particular person, what was happening, we were at lunch and we were all chatting. And once again, he brought up the fact that his location was the issue. And when he moves closer to home where he grew up, it was going to be a lot better. However, if he moves closer, there's all these other issues. And he has traveled around, he's been very successful in his business endeavors. And his business takes him around the country, or it has, per his choice, really. And it's taken him to really great locations, so great places around, you know, Texas, Colorado. He's a mountain person, so really likes the outdoors. So perfect for him. But he was complaining about the location and all the places he lived and how horrible they were. And I started asking him what was good about them. And he really got upset at me. Like you could see it in his face. He was so enraged. Like, Doug, why do you keep asking me these questions? And I kept asking him, like, you know, eventually I went into what is the one thing that is always at that location where you end up? And he got so frustrated. Meanwhile, the other guys are kind of laughing. You know, they're all friends at this point. And so they're laughing because they're seeing what I'm seeing. Is he's stuck in the story that his location is the issue. His location is causing all of his problems. When in fact, you and I know it had nothing to do with the location at all. Eventually, we wrapped it around after about 15 minutes of dialogue and coaching. And he finally realized that there was one thing that was always showing up the location, and that was him. But he hadn't yet got it to the level that you're talking about, Tim. And, you know, that's what we're seeing with these guys oftentimes is they're creating, you know, and I did it too, and maybe you did, but we create this external, you know, issue. The problem is external of us. The problem is external of me. And it's my location that's the issue. It's the place I'm living. It's my town. It's too small. It's too big. You know, the people aren't, you know, smart enough. The people are, you know, too greedy. I can't have conversations that matter, whatever it may be. Insert whatever excuse you want. But the one common denominator with each of the men that have this complaint is that they are at the location and they haven't taken care of themselves.
Mm. So, what do you think then is the reason why, in this instance, this particular guy, and it's not limited or restricted to this particular guy, is it? We see it time and time again. So, what do you think the reason is for this story?
Yeah, I think it's important. I'm not calling him out particularly. I'm using him as an example, right? He's an amazing man. The reason for this story is it's easier to blame what's external of us, right? It's easier for us to blame what's outside of us. So when we're not doing well inside, we're not given the skills as children, for most of us. Going through school certainly doesn't teach us how to deal with our inner game, our inner environment, and our mindset. So as we're going through life, we're walking down this road of life and we hit these bumps along the road, right? It's really bumpy. And as we hit these bumps, we start to look for things that are wrong. We start to go into finding problems mode, right? As men, we like to solve problems. And then as we're going through life, though, we're looking for problems to solve. But when we're not happy, when we're not fulfilled, we start looking for things external of us, right? It's my wife that's the problem. It's my kids. It's my job. It's my location. That's the issue. And so for this particular guy, he's an extremely intelligent person, and he was going through a rough patch and hadn't had a chance in the past before coming to the powerful man and coming to the alpha reset. Hadn't worked deeply on his inner game, and so he didn't see it. Right? You can't see the forest from the trees at that point. And so what happens is these men start blaming what's external of them, right? We start looking for fault in others rather than taking care of our own garden, or tending to our garden. And you and I often say, before pointing out, your neighbor's trash, make sure you tend to your side of the street first. And I think a lot of these men, and this guy in particular, were starting to look across the street and look at all the garbage and look at all the issues across the street rather than looking inside themselves.
So you're so true. And it's really fascinating, isn't it? Because as I'm reflecting back on what happened with this particular guy and, all the men that have been through the alpha reset and the activation method and the pattern that shows up, it's almost like there's a curse of the achiever, if you will, going on with these guys. And that is that, they have strived so much to create a certain level of success in their life that it almost traps them. And the persona that they then show up in the world with, the mask, ultimately, that's what it is, starts to really build a lot of guilt and shame, because to everybody else on the outside, they look like they've got this amazing lifestyle. They've got the perfect marriage, they've got the perfect business, they can do whatever they want, they can travel, they can do this. So as everybody starts to tell the guys, and I hear this every day, when people in their life start to mirror back to them, hey, wow, you've got such an amazing life. You can't have any troubles, or you shouldn't do this, or you shouldn't do that. They then start to close down. And sometimes, often, they start to believe this as well. They start to believe what everybody else around them is telling them. However, everybody else around them is telling them these things based on the representative that this person is putting forward, based on the mask that they're seeing. So the lies start to build, the persona builds, the character builds, and as a result, it becomes really painful, like you were saying a moment ago, to take ownership and accept that, wow, do you know what? I'm actually falling way short of the line here. I'm actually nowhere near as far ahead as I thought I was. Sure, financially, they may be there or whatever, but for the most part, in terms of fulfillment, in terms of happiness, in terms of the amount of love that they have in their life and the presence they have for their family and their kids and, the staff themselves, it's just not there. And you weren't there, Doug, but I was with this particular guy when we were doing the exit interview. And one of the questions he was asked was, why did you join the Powerful Man? And he shared a very, very touching story about how he was off on disability from his very well-paying corporate job. And he gave him a lot of space and time to really reflect on what his life was like and how he was showing up in his life. And he really hit a low point, and so low that he was, contemplating suicide. And then,
Wow.
he the guy, so you know how amazing he is. Unfortunately, he reached out, and it was in that dark period of him really getting real with himself and realizing that life isn't as good as I'm making it out to be. There's some pain here that I'm not addressing. Then fast forward to the Alpha Reset. At first, that exterior, although he'd accepted where he was still showing up there with his representative because he was so afraid of what taking ownership would say about him as a man. Does this mean I've failed as a father? Does it mean I've failed as a husband, as an entrepreneur? When they're able to actually just drop those labels and lean into this and really come clean with themselves first and foremost, then come clean with their wives and their children and whoever's involved, it always opens up an amazing conversation, but an amazing new chapter, if you will, in their life, in their relationship. And it's never as scary as it seems. We've spoken about this time and time again on past episodes, running towards your fear and other ones that we've mentioned. And it's never as scary as it seems, but to go into that space. And what I love about the Alpha Reset is it gives these guys a space to really express that anger and the sadness and the pain that they're feeling, that they're denying within themselves, which is then causing them to not want to own the story. So, for this guy in particular, I'm so, when the penny dropped and he's like, it's not the location. It's not the job. And he just went on and on and on. And you saw his face soften and him realize that, I can change this. Wow. Because before he felt so helpless, didn't he? Whilst he was blaming the story, he was very, very helpless. He was very much a cause of the situation.
Hey guys, I had to interrupt this show because I want to talk to you about a case study we put together. It's only 11 minutes, and what we do is we go over and show you how almost 300 men have taken control of their life, have already 4x'd their business revenue, and are having more connected and intimate sex with their partner using the activation method. And they're doing all of this without burning down their relationships and without suffering and sacrificing their health. We want you to have this too. So go over to thepowerfulman.com/11, the number 11, and get this right now. It's only 11 minutes and it's going to show you exactly how these men have done it. All right, let's get back to the episode. This guy is a guy's guy, right? He's
very much so,
yeah, very much a man's man, kind of guy you go drink some beers with. And I don't even know if he would say he was lost. I feel like, he was looking just to better himself and, in some way, knew things weren't working out as well. And again, he had these things external of him, as many of the men do. Certainly I had in the past as well. And it's something I'm always working on, but would continuously blame other things outside of him, not realizing, what really was going on is he wasn't happy with himself and who he was showing up as, truly showing up as a man. And this is something you and I talk about often, is there was no congruency with his standards or values, right? He'd say one thing, this is what I believe. He happened to be a Christian, Catholic, and, had certain values and belief systems that were very devout for him, yet was living his life another way. Privately, right? He didn't, talk about this. And most of these guys, and he said the same thing. In fact, all these guys like, hey, my best friend doesn't know these things that I'm sharing. That's one of the cool things about the Alpha Reset is it's such an environment that's broken down by the coaches that it presents that opportunity to explore these things in a very safe environment. And so for him, the location became the crutch. The location became the thing that he could point at and blame external of himself, thus releasing the pressure from him, right? Mm-hmm. It's not my fault, it's the location. And so in that same conversation, Tim, again, I know you weren't there, you were out doing stuff. The same conversation, he, went on to really complain about his wife and all the things that she wasn't doing in the marriage, the things that she wasn't showing up as, the problem, her as the problem, right? Like, Doug, she's the issue. And he started going on and on and on. And I stopped him. And again, you got to remember, we've already gone through this location thing. This guy is visibly upset with me already. And he transitioned to his wife. And he's standing up against the wall and I'm sitting down eating. And so I just, as I often do, I just kept going. And so I said, look, here's the deal. Your wife's external view. If your wife was standing up here right now, you weren't here, and I asked her, if her husband was showing up as the man that she married, as the man he promised to be, what would her answer be? And he paused and he thought about it for a second. That's when he said, you know what? She'd say, no, he's not. Again, he was blaming things external of him for his problems, for what he was going on. And, we talk about this often on the show. I'm sure we've talked about it before. Right now, the flavor of the month, the flavor of the year really is hustle. That's what's being sold out there in the marketplace. We have, when this comes out, you're already going to have the, 10X Growth Con has already happened. It's a lot of this is going to be hustle, hustle, hustle. You got to work hard, only sleep 4 hours, work 7 days a week, get up at 3 a.m, go to bed at, 1 a.m, that kind of a deal. And so that's being, sold to these guys because it's sellable. And I think some of these people believe it, but it's not producing the results that they actually desire, the outcomes. When you look at outcome orientation, right? As a business, we're always looking at outcomes. What's the outcome that we want? The process comes second. And so with these guys, they're blaming things external of them because they're in hustle mode and they're making some money, but they're not fulfilled inside. And when you're not fulfilled inside, truly filling your cup up, then you have to start blaming things external of you because you're empty inside. So therefore, the problem has to be external. And that's what was happening with this guy and happens with a lot of men that you and I end up talking to.
Yeah, completely. I did a video into the activation method community today titled Root Cause versus Symptom. And the whole video was about, hey, you guys in the community, all of you, or if not 95% of you, have applied to be part of the community off the back of expressing the pain in your relationship. We offer a 7-step decompression cheat sheet through some Facebook ads. The guys come in, they can go into the group. So it's a relationship problem. And then when they come into the group, they answer some questions so we can better serve them. And one of the questions is, what's the biggest problem you're struggling with right now? And I would say over 80% of the responses we get, if not more, are all around business. Oh, it's the staff, it's the systems, just need to make more money, it's work-life balance, it's, so on. I could go on and on and on. And that's what they believe at this moment in time is the reason why they're experiencing the problem in the relationship. The cheat sheet is all about how to switch off. And, the video that I shared today was exactly going into what you're talking about, Doug, that, listen, often what you think is the actual problem isn't. It's the symptom. And, what we came down to in the video, the message I basically delivered was what's going on beneath you. It's not your business. It's none of those things. It's you. For the most part, you're operating from fear. You're checking your phone as soon as you wake up. You're checking your phone right before you go to bed. You're lying awake at night, thoughts swirling, anxious. You're distracted during the day. You're being everything to everyone. You're lacking focus. You're unclear. You're burnt out. You're scattered. All these things then mean that when you try and go home and be present with your wife or your kids or whatever, and you struggle, it's not because of all those things going on in your business. It's because of the energy and the space in which you are choosing to operate from. The reality is there's always going to be the next thing in business, the next system. There's always going to be refinements. There's always going to be it's never going to end. As long as you want to grow your business, it's never going to end. But as long as you want to believe it's the business, you set yourself up for failure. It's not that. It's you. It all starts with you. And I completely agree. This whole message around working harder and hustling and 15, 16, 17 hours a day. I don't know. It might work for some people. It doesn't work for you and I. It doesn't work for the men within the activation method or the brotherhood. That's not what we're about at the Powerful Man. We do not believe that you must sacrifice your health, your happiness, or your relationships in order to be the entrepreneur that you're capable of being. We've seen it time and time again that guys come to us having tried that model, and what's happened? There's a trail of destruction behind them. Marriages are falling apart. The health's in pieces. They feel empty and unfulfilled. Like you were saying, they're not filling their cup. It's very much that have, do, be mentality that we often speak about. When I have the 100,000 a month revenue, when I have the staff, when I have the whatever, that's when I'll be able to go on holiday and switch off, and then I'll be happy and present for my family. Never going to happen. It's not going to happen like that. Because that thing on the end, that have item, just going to shift to another have thing until you increase your standards, fill your cup, and put yourself first. It's not going to happen otherwise.
Yeah, it's so true. And, when you think about it, you made me, I'm taking pause to reflect, is when we do these, and if somebody's never been through, any Powerful Man course, or has never been to an Alpha Reset, I know it's hard to understand, but, these are real guys. These are your friends, your neighbors, your bosses, your coworkers, that are there. And when we ask the question, at the end, and I think you asked the question of, how many guys have thought about or attempted to commit suicide? And several of them, in the room had come close. And that was really alarming to me. When we're looking at this, what drives a human, a man, to get close? And I'm talking close, like have plans, have things set out, gun loaded, the whole nine, close to ending their life. Yet publicly, the displays on social media, Facebook, like everything's rosy, right? There's something that drives us to do that. And that's that inner, dialogue and mindset that occurs when we let things get away from us, and we let things slip, and we're not up leveling our life. Maybe we listen to podcasts like this one, maybe we read some books, we're in a community, but until, we take that step to do the deep dive, to go through something like the Alpha Reset, we leave that door open, and open too wide, in my opinion. And it was really, both alarming, but also heartwarming for me to see those men come out just, how it is. I know you obviously do, but they're totally changed. We joke around that people get tans. They physically change color. They get color in their face. They get vibrancy, and you can see all of this pressure from what they believe to be their past stories and mistakes. And some are, right? Some are, but they come forward and step into them and take responsibility of their lives. They gain back control, really, of something that they lost. And oftentimes they didn't even know that they lost that. And I think that's one of the most rewarding aspects of what we do.
Oh, God. I was rubbing one of the guy's shoulders as we were walking out on the final day. And he was like, wow, they feel a lot looser. His traps, because it was literally his shoulders were raised on the day he arrived because he was carrying around so much tension and anger, all this bottled up emotion. And you're completely right. Until you focus on you, it's just not going to work. I don't mean to take this off on a tangent with this one comment, but it's an example of this. And that is, recently one of the guys in the brotherhood, we just stopped working with him because he just wasn't doing the work. He was wanting to focus on business to grow his business. He had no morning routine in place. He had a huge gaping hole in his self-love and how he sees himself. And he's sharing stuff through social media about this certain lifestyle that he's got, and it's just adding to the mask. It's just he's boxing himself into a corner that makes it harder and harder to get out of, because it adds more and more of a burden, and he feels more ashamed of basically where he is and who he is, hence the lies he's telling himself. And it's easier for him to blame other things, just like location and so on and so forth. His whole thing was Facebook ads. He was blaming Facebook ads. But
Don't get me started.
It's nothing to do with the Facebook ads. I've seen it. We've seen it at the Alpha Reset, Doug. This was, a few years ago, where one of the guys there, a brilliant guy, he'd been trying to grow his business. He couldn't get past his certain upper limit. And at the Alpha Reset, what came out for him was that he was just wanting to do his father proud. That's all he wanted. He felt so unloved by his father. And, when he was younger, he stepped in to earn some money for his family because his family was struggling after some risks that his father had taken. And he did well. And he really felt like he showed his father up. And ever since then, he felt like his father had really been very different with him. So what did he do? He dimmed his light. He held himself back. He just wanted to, again, like I said, do his father proud. And for him, a huge wave of emotion came out, a huge wave of sadness, like uncontrollably sobbing, eyes, nose, everything, uncontrollable. And then afterwards, he had a conversation with his father, and it's hilarious because I remember getting the messages from him. It's like, Tim, business has doubled this month. Tim, business has trebled this month. Tim, business has quadrupled this month. And every month it just kept growing and growing and growing. And he hadn't made a great deal of changes to the strategy at all. It was how he was showing up as a leader and the energy that it was bringing to the table as well, because he had stopped blaming everything outside of him and got to the root cause and really changed it. And it can happen that quickly. It really can.
We see it time and time again. It's a beautiful thing. And it's why I feel so blessed to do what we do. And it's amazing to see these guys go through it. So to wrap up here in this conversation, gentlemen, if you are blaming your location or something external of you, I invite you to the possibility that it is not the location. It is not where you're born. It is not those things external of you. And take a deep dive internally. Yes, I get that sometimes things happen and, take that on a case-by-case basis. But I would guess about 90+% of the time, it is not that item external of you. It is what is lying inside. And I invite you to take a deep dive, an Indiana Jones type adventure into your own internal world and see what's going on there. And I think that will be an adventure that you will never, ever regret.
Well said.
All right, Tim, that wraps it up for us for another episode here. You know what? If anybody wants to see that testimonial, go ahead and email tim@thepowerfulman.com and he'll get that over to you. Until then, we'll see you for another episode of The Powerful Man Show. Thanks, Tim.
Cheers, Doug.